Welcome back to the channel. I'm Sarah.
I'm Bob.
And today we are on St. Simon's Island and we are taking a tour of Fort Frederica. Fort Frederica was established in the 1740s by James Oglethorpe, who led a group of people here to not only settle Georgia, but to create this frontier outpost in southern Georgia to defend against the Spanish settlers to the south in Florida.
We will walk you through various spots of the fort, giving you historical background and details. This is an absolutely gorgeous setting, and we hope you will learn much history about this important site in the building of our nation.
This is a part of the National Park Service. It's a national monument, and to come inside here and to go through everything is at no charge. So I hope if you get down to St. Simon's Island, you'll take in this important historical area. Let's get started with a trip to the Visitor Center. Inside the center, there is a small theater where you can watch a 20-minute movie on the history of the fort. There are displays of artifacts that have been dug up in archaeological digs on the site. There are also interactive displays and activities for children to participate in. I found this demonstrative display of the layers of artifacts that could be found in different times, from modern, plantation, English colonial, Spanish mission, and American Indian, very interesting. The first soldiers arrived on St. Simon's Island in 1738. They served as a thin red line protecting the British colonies to the north from the Spanish to the south, but much more time was spent in toil than in battle. Most of the soldiers garrisoned at Fort Frederica lived in crude huts surrounding the parade ground. The sturdier barracks housed only a few lucky soldiers. Living in palmetto thatched shelters might have been passable in mild winter, but summer brought heat, biting flies, mosquitoes, sand gnats, and snakes. In return for their willingness to lay down their lives in the wilderness, their housing was rough, their pay was meager, and they had to grow their own food.
Tending a kitchen garden was one of the main tasks of the women of Frederica. Cooking, making medicinal remedies from herbs, and preparing food occupied much of the day. Colonial women, first and foremost, were expected to be cooks. To create meals, they needed fruits, vegetables, and herbs not readily available in a frontier outpost unless grown by the settlers themselves. In addition to their toil in the garden and kitchen, women worked alongside their husbands and were seamstresses, caregivers, and housekeepers. Truly, a woman's work was never done.
The first British settlers landed here on February 18, 1736, 40 years before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The town they established lay on the southern frontier of the English colonies on land contested by Spain. James Oglethorpe was their leader. Fearing invasion by land or water, Frederica settlers built a fort on the riverbank and a palisaded wall and moat around the town. Broad Street was Frederica's main avenue, leading from the town gate to the fort. Some of Frederica's most prosperous citizens built their homes of brick and tabby here, side by side with the wood houses of less wealthy freeholders. Frederica resembled a typical English town, but it was only a small island of British civilization on the edge of the great American wilderness.
The trustees of the colony agreed to supply the settlers with rations of beef, pork, cheese, flour, and other provisions for 1 year. After that, they were expected to raise their own livestock and crops. Provisions at Fort Frederica in general were plentiful. There's venison, beef, pork at 2 pence, halfpenny per pound, and sometimes under. Fish are extremely cheap.
In 1743, Mary Musgrove Matthews General Oglethorpe's Indian interpreter lived in this lot. The daughter of a white trader and a Creek Indian mother, Mary left the Indians at the age of 10 to receive a Christian education in South Carolina. A skillful interpreter, negotiator, and trader, she helped Oglethorpe win the friendship and support of the Indians. When Frederica was established in 1736, each freeholder was given a lot 60 feet wide by 90 feet deep. The house that stood on these ruins was a two-story duplex with tabby walls and elegant brick and wood detailing. Evidence of 2 wine cellars was discovered.
The first settler on this lot was Daniel Cannon, a carpenter. Cannon, with his sons Joseph and Daniel, lived here 4 years. Then they quitted ye colony. More than 1/3 of Frederica's freeholders left town during the first 5 years. The ring of bricks just behind the house site marks the location of a brick-lined well. Drinking water at Frederica was plentiful and of tolerable good quality. Priscilla Dunbar, the original settler on this lot, came to Frederica with her brother, a ship's captain from Scotland. 2 years later, Priscilla married Patrick Houston, a merchant, and they lived here in a frame cottage that may have also doubled as a shop. General Oglethorpe loaned Patrick money to buy a ship to carry freight between Frederica and Savannah. The Reverend John Wesley was once a passenger. Houston also served as quartermaster of the regiment. When Oglethorpe's regiment disbanded, the Houstons moved to a plantation near Savannah. Patrick inherited the title of baronet and was appointed to the Royal Council of Georgia. The Houstons had 6 children: John, who may have been born at this site, who served as a delegate to the Continental Congress and was later elected governor of Georgia.
During its short history, Frederica's residents engaged in a variety of occupations. There were literally butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. At this site, John Caldwell and his family made candles and soap fine enough to export to Pennsylvania and New York. He was also a traveling merchant, shopkeeper, bailiff, surveyor, and conservator of the peace. The Caldwell house was one of the best in town, with thick walls made of tabby.
This ruin represents 2 houses which may have shared a common wall, much like English row houses of the period. The houses stood on adjacent lots. Unfortunately for the families who lived here, it was too close for comfort. Samuel Davison lived in the left house with his wife and 3 children. Davison operated a tavern, made gun stocks for the regiment, and served as town constable. The Reverend Charles Wesley called this popular man "my good Samaritan." The Davisons left in 1741, unable to tolerate their neighbors, the Hawkins. Dr. Thomas Hawkins lived in the right house and was a regimental surgeon, town doctor, apothecary, and magistrate. He was frequently embroiled in lawsuits. His wife, Beatrice, was ill-tempered. Here she attempted to kill the Reverend John Wesley. He obviously escaped.
Well, look what we found, an orange. It seems like this orange tree is growing right next to the foundation of that live oak. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it up there, but there's some oranges there as well.
General Oglethorpe chose this site for Frederica's fort. It was high ground on a river bend where the cannon could hold off Spanish ships upstream or downstream. Flanking marshes gave protection against land attack, and there were plenty of timber for building fortifications. The fort at Frederica became the center of military operations along the southern front of the British colonies. From here, Oglethorpe launched offenses against the Spanish at St. Augustine. The Spanish invaded Georgia in 1742, but were turned back before they could reach Frederica. The settlers built the fort when they arrived in 1736. Later it was strengthened.
This is the site of the North Storehouse. It was a 3-story brick and timber structure with a flat and tarred roof. Ships cargoes of food, tools, weapons, and other provisions vital to the colony were stored here. The storehouse was also used by the church. John Wesley conducted Anglican services on the third floor of the building.
The King's Magazine, as it is known today, was probably built during the latter part of Frederica's colonial period. Less than half of the 96-foot structure remained standing. Beginning in 1903, the King's Magazine became the focal point of the efforts to preserve the remains of Frederica. Walls were rebuilt and the riverbank was backfilled to prevent the erosion of the site.
This brick structure may have been part of the ruins of the blacksmith shop built during Frederica's first year. Archaeologists recovered more than 5,000 artifacts from the floor. Among these were gun parts, trigger guards, musket locks, and different things that would have been used by the fort. The blacksmith worked in iron, copper, brass, and lead. Products also included nails, hinges, latches, hooks, and a variety of tools.
Big guns were mounted behind the fort parapets and in batteries near the water's edge. In 1742, cannon located downriver prevented Spanish galleys from reaching the fort. The corroded gun tube may have been part of Frederica's original armament. Its wooden carriage has been reconstructed. Other cannon nearby are of the same age, but were not here originally. A smooth-bore muzzle loader like this could shoot a 12-pound ball 1 mile. The compact garrison-type carriage recoiled after each shot, then was rolled back into firing position. A wooden wedge was used to set the aim higher or lower. Frederica's soldiers and settlers could not have survived in the Georgia wilderness without large supplies of food, clothing, tools, and weapons. Responding to this need, General Oglethorpe built 2 3-story storehouses, the North Storehouse in 1736 and this one 2 years later. Supplies from Great Britain and Savannah were unloaded and stored here. Francis Moore, like other Frederica settlers, wore many hats. He served as General Oglethorpe's secretary, town recorder, and keeper of the supplies in the King's storehouses. Moore was also an author, and shortly after he returned to England in 1743, he published an eyewitness account of the founding of Frederica entitled A Voyage to Georgia. Although records show that Moore was an energetic and responsible man, his public duties led to disputes with Oglethorpe. Oglethorpe wrote to a friend in 1741, "My secretary Moore has behaved in a very wrong manner, which puts me under some difficulties till I can get another clerk." At the time of the Spanish attack in 1742, about 200 British troops were stationed at Frederica. Some of the officers and married men lived in their own homes. Others lived camp-style in clapboard or thatched huts adjacent to this site. The building here could accommodate more than 100 men. This structure took the form of a square with rooms surrounding an open parade. Walls were made of tabby 1 foot thick. Soldiers entered the barracks through the existing gateway tower. During the 1742 military campaign, the barracks served as a hospital and as quarters for Spanish prisoners of war.
This is just a lovely avenue of oaks here as we head back towards the visitor center. It's one thing I love about being down here is seeing these beautiful trees.
And with the hanging Spanish moss on them too. It really is just breathtakingly beautiful. Thanks for joining us today for this historical journey at Fort Frederica on St. Simon's Island.
We are part-time travelers traveling part-time to various places in the United States and internationally. We are Next Act Retirement and Travel, and because we do so many different things, we are organizing our different tours or trips into playlists. Things about St. Simon's Island will be in the St. Simon's playlist. Look for more there. And thanks for joining us on this tour, and we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.